to our Introduction to Exchange 2010 Features and Functionality Seminar. Today we're going to be going over, a high-level review of the Exchange 2010 features and functionality. We'll be stressing some of the features that we see as being great value to a number of our customers. So to start off with, my name is Tony Greco. I'm a managing consultant for Catapult Systems. I've been with them for about 6 years. I've been dealing with Exchange since it had the name Microsoft Mail. For those of you who have been around long enough, you know how painful that was. We'll start off talking about some of the strategic business challenges that the Exchange team was trying to address when they developed the Exchange 2010. It probably comes as no surprise that companies of all sizes have been faced with a number of strategic business challenges as the organizations seek to compete in the new economy that we have. The main one seems to be lowering IT costs. People want to do more with less. This sounds like a great concept, but if the tools aren't there, we can't do it. We also see the need to increase productivity, not just in our IT department, but to implement tools that will help increase productivity. Exchange 2010 is one of those tools. And then managing risk has become key. A number of new regulations have come into play over the past 10 years, and compliance has become a topic that is frequently discussed at all levels of implementation of messaging systems. So, how do we get there? How do we balance these needs in the changing workplace? Exchange 2010 is going to help you achieve some new levels of reliability and performance by delivering features that help simplify your administration, protect your communications, and at the same time, increase your business mobility. What do we mean by flexible and reliable? Well, we need to tailor our deployment to your needs. Used to be when we had Exchange, everybody got the same messaging system. It was messaging. There was no flexibility in it. Now we have a lot of flexibility around our deployment, around availability, administration. We'll get into those a little bit deeper. Anywhere access. Exchange in the past has started to grant us other methods to connect in besides the Outlook client. We started to see connectivity through mobile devices. We saw a web interface. Now we have enhanced our web interface extremely. We've created tools to help manage inbox overload. We've allowed greater access through the use of mobile devices such as smartphones, and not just the Microsoft phones, Palm and Apple and the Google-based phones. All of those out there have direct access into Exchange. And then protection and compliance. We needed to simplify and automate the process of protecting your company's communications and meeting regulatory requirements. It's worth noting that Exchange 2010 was designed, developed, and tested from the ground up with a focus on software plus services strategy. So let's take a closer look at these areas. Oops. Let's click on the right button and the slide will advance. So flexible and reliable. Email is business critical. That used to be an argument, but I don't hear anybody having that anymore. Continuous availability has become a must. However, high availability used to be extremely difficult. Now, not so much. Additionally, businesses need the flexibility to deploy email in ways that meet some specific and, most importantly, ever-changing needs. So, with Exchange 2010, we have the flexibility to tailor our user deployments based upon unique needs and to easily keep email continuously available for our users. The core Exchange platform innovations include a new unique approach to high availability and disaster recovery. This is not the approach that we had in any previous version of Exchange. We're utilizing features such as the database availability groups and online mailbox moves. We can more easily and confidently implement mailbox resiliency with database level replication, maintenance, and failover, all within our familiar Exchange management tools. With online mailbox moves, we can actually move a user's mailbox while they remain connected to it. They don't get a disconnect. They're not offline for an hour. they're actually able to continue working, and the disconnect is measured in under a second. With role-based security model, it allows us to delegate common or specialized tasks to users without giving them full admin rights. It used to be all or nothing. All or nothing doesn't work in this world. We can set that users can create and maintain their own email distribution groups without having to call the help desk. If you've got to manage a help desk, this is one of their heavy loads. More importantly, though, we've got a 90% reduction on disk I/O overhead compared to Exchange Server 2003. This enables more storage hardware options, anything from traditional storage area networks to desktop class direct attached storage. Yes, I did actually say that. You're able to select storage solutions that offer you the best return on investment and cost savings. Exchange 2010 is actually optimized for use with SAS drives. That is a very detailed IOPS discussion, but I've seen the numbers, I've run the tests, and it really is optimized for using DAS instead of the more expensive SAN devices. So the first thing we're going to talk about is continuous availability, right? We needed, as the importance of email communications has grown, companies are counting on us in the IT world to prevent email outages. And, you know, everybody has different levels of the requirements as far as how long can email be down, can email be down, and I don't care what your service level agreements are. If email is down, everybody's howling 30 seconds after it goes down. So traditionally, we've been required to deploy expensive shared storage clustering or purchase third-party data replication products to provide full redundancy, not only within a data center, but across data centers. Exchange Server 2007 introduced a built-in data replication technology, continuous replication, which really reduced the cost of deploying high available Exchange infrastructure. And companies want an easier way to replicate their email data to a remote location. If you used any of the replication, continuous replication, or standby replication services in Exchange 2010, they were somewhat intensive to maintain. Exchange 2010 uses the same continuous replication technology found in Exchange Server 2007. However, it combines that with an on-site data replication and off-site data replication into a single framework. So you no longer have to maintain two different types. And it uses what's called a database availability group. Now, the Exchange Server Database Availability Groups, or DAGs, handle all aspects of clustering internally. There's no longer a need to manage failover clustering separately in Windows. Administrators can add replicated database copies incrementally, up to 16 total per DAG, and exchange switches between these copies automatically as needed. The mailbox servers involved in clustering can host other Exchange roles, such as client access and hub transport, so full redundancy of Exchange services and data can be achieved with just two servers. A legacy Exchange clustering, single copper clustering, which was the only clustering option in Exchange 2000 and Exchange 2003, is being retired in favor of the Exchange 2007 style clustering. Third-party replication products will be supported, however, they're no longer needed. The new high availability architecture provides a simplified recovery from a variety of failures, from disk level to server level to even data center level. It can be deployed on a variety of storage groups as discussed previously. Something to note, a database availability group contains a set of databases, and each of these databases must exist in that group on all servers. So if I assign a database availability group to 3 servers, then all of those databases in that database availability group have to exist in all 3 of those servers. However, the primary, where it's homed, is only on one server. It's not a multi-write operation, meaning you can't have users in database 1 on one server in San Jose and users on database 1 in New York. All of them would come back to the same mailbox server. However, database 1 can be hosted in San Jose, database 2 can be hosted in Another server in San Jose in Database 3 could be hosted in New York. So, talking a little more about continuous availability. We have to keep our users productive during mailbox moves and maintenance. I don't know how many of y'all have had to deal with performing maintenance on a server, or maybe you just want to upgrade to new hardware or something, and your users are offline while you're doing this. This is extremely painful for our user environment. Anytime we can minimize the impact on our users, we're much happier, they're much happier. So with Exchange 2010, users can remain online while their mailboxes are moved between servers. They're still sending messages, receiving messages. They've got full access to their mailbox. We can perform a migration and maintenance during regular business hours. This sounds just like a nice thing for IT folks, but it's also a cost-saving measure. So when I don't have to keep 6 people here all through the night, then I can do this with fewer people. Simplifying administration has been a call for all systems for the last several years. As we start to integrate our systems more and more into business, we find that the administration of them has become, in some cases, tedious. With Exchange 2010, we can delegate administration in a greatly improved manner over previous versions of Exchange. Exchange 2007 had some delegation, but still required modifications of ACL, Access Control Lists, to create specialized administrative roles, for example, a compliance officer. In Exchange 2003, managing permissions required customization of ACLs, about 560 ACEs in total. A whole white paper was dedicated to ACL modification, and if you ever had to do it, it was doable, but it was extremely painful. In Exchange Server 2007, the property sets made it easier, but doing split permission was still extremely complicated. If I didn't want to assign it to everything, I still required to modify the ACL. There was a very lengthy Exchange 2007 white paper that was written on how to do this just for unified messaging. And permissions were focused on the AD objects and didn't map well with the tasks that you did in Exchange. So in Exchange 2010, they've introduced the role-based access control, or the RBAC, capabilities to allow Exchange administrators to easily create and specialize the administrative roles. Thus, we have delegated administration. What does that mean to us? Well, role-based access control, RBAC, Exchange 2010, allows us to create specialized roles with specialized action. We can create a help desk administrator role that only has the ability to create new mailboxes or change mailbox quotas or message size limits. This is a common requirement. We can create a specialized telephony specialist role whose permissions are limited to managing just the dial plans. Or we can create a specialized compliance officer role whose permissions are limited to performing cross-mailbox searches for legal discovery. We're getting a lot of requests for the last one. We can create human resources role for individuals who are assigned to this role who are able to update employee contact information. All of these roles can easily be created without going through and modifying the ACLs and the ACEs. Role-based access control is extremely simple to manage. Your administrators just use the Exchange Management Shell. If you're not familiar with the Exchange Management Shell, that's PowerShell. To create roles to define or grant the set of operations for a specific user. Notice I said operations. We're not granting rights to the objects necessarily, although that does get propagated down. We're actually granting rights to perform operations. So we create roles to define or grant the set of operations for a specific user, create a mailbox, set the mailbox quota limit, etc. We can define a scope of where the operations can be run. So we can limit it by organizational units. We can limit it by, mostly you're going to use organizational units, although you can limit it somewhat by groups. We can assign the roles and scope to a set of users. Easiest way, of course, is going to be assigning them to an Active Directory group and dropping the users in that group. This makes life much easier on us because once we've set up these roles, somebody new comes into the help desk, we add them to the group, we no longer have to go and modify individual access control lists. So what required an entire white paper in Exchange 2007 to create a specialized unified messaging role, and I've read the white paper, and it was very, very painful. This can now be done in Exchange 2010 with a single PowerShell commandlet in the Exchange Management Shell. So further to simplify administration, the largest percentage of help desk calls incurred by an organization using Exchange are distribution group management, message tracking, changes to personal information in the address book, and similar tedious tasks that ought to be frequently pushed out to the users. The annual cost to help desk support staff, I believe this is a Gartner number, is with 7,500 mailbox, it's approximately $20 a mailbox. This goes up significantly for a smaller organization, and of course for larger organizations it'll scale down. So with Exchange 2010 role-based access control capabilities to allow Exchange administrators to give selective self-management capabilities to end users by moving self-service tasks to the end users. With that, organizations can reduce the cost for help desk support and allow IT staff to focus on more important tasks. This is no different than when we started setting up self-service password resets, which have become extremely common. Anytime that we can keep the user from calling the help desk and allowing them to do some of this themselves, the things that we don't worry about them doing, we don't need to control, for example, personal information in the address book, some distribution groups, the happier we are. And remember, it's not just for distribution group management, it's also good for message tracking. When you've got a user who can't figure out what happened to a message and you give them an easy way for them to track delivery receipt information on all messages sent, they'll be doing that themselves. Editing personal information in the address book, we get the call for that all the time. Let's just let the users handle what cube they sit in, what floor they're in, what their phone number is. The end-user self-service management support is performed through a web-based management interface, the Exchange Control Panel. This means that I can advertise that through my company portal for my end users, and controlling access to it, limiting it to users, it's already self-secure. Some other typical end-user task options will be moved from this web-based management interface, such as out-of-office, inbox rules, mobile device management, etc. Very powerful to let the users handle their own updates for a large number of items. Now, deployment flexibility. This was a big one, and I was kind of skeptical when I first saw this. We can select from a range of storage enabled by scalability and performance enhancement. This means we can scale from a storage area network, which used to be the goal of all Exchange implementations, get it on a SAN so that we can manage it, all the way down to direct attach with SAS disk, with SATA disks, or JBOD, which stands for just a bunch of disks, SATA disk, RAIDless. It's possible. Didn't say I would recommend RAIDless. A lot of folks have been asking, there's terabyte and a half SATA disks out there. Why am I buying a 350 gig disk for my SAN? Why can't I buy a terabyte disk? And the answer is they're not available on the fiber or the SCSI. It's available through the SATA disk and the SAS disk. So with Exchange Server 2003, if we want to deploy a highly available clustered infrastructure, the only storage option available truly was a SAN. While you could do it with direct attached storage, the I/O was so bad that it really didn't work very well. Exchange Server 2007 added the ability to use direct attached storage in a clustered Exchange deployment, and reductions in disk I/O allowed for greater freedom in disk choice. There was a 70% reduction in disk I/O from 2003 to 2007. In Exchange 2010, there are additional improvements to performance, reliability, and high availability that enable even a wider range of storage options. 2010 delivers 70% reduction in disk I/O over 2007. Now remember, we said 2007 had a 70% reduction over 2003, and we're going to reduce that by another 70%. This means that more disks meet the minimum performance required to run Exchange. And it is truly awesome to see a large direct attach SATA cabinet that costs less than 2 disks for my SAN functioning better in Exchange 2010 than the SAN is functioning for my Exchange 2003 environment. Exchange 2010 is a lot more resilient to storage problems. When corruption is caused by things like minor disk faults, Exchange will automatically repair the affected database pages using one of the database copies configured for high availability. Notice that this is leveraging things like the database availability groups. So if you're just going to have one copy of your database, you're backing up to utilizing highly available storage. When Exchange 2010 is deployed with advanced high availability, and by advanced high availability we mean 3 or more copies, replicated database copies. Back to the database availability groups, if I've got copies of my database on 3 or more servers, we can actually implement a RAIDless architecture which would significantly cut costs because the redundancy is in the database copy. Database failover is, I won't claim it's instantaneous, but it's faster than the Outlook reconnect. So when your database if your database were to go down, your Outlook client would try and connect, would time out, and would reconnect, and in that time period, your database will have failed over using the database availability groups. The flexibility of storage really gives us capabilities that we did not have before and choices we did not have before. It gives us the freedom to deploy large multi-gigabyte mailboxes without breaking our hardware budgets. More importantly, because we can use cheaper storage, having 3 copies of the database is not so insanely expensive as it used to be. Because with database availability groups, we are talking full copies of the databases. Now, ease of deployment and reduction of installation time with flexible server roles has become critically important. Customers are looking for a way to stage an Exchange deployment as well as make right decisions around securing the platform, reducing surface area for critical internet-facing capabilities. And when I say stage a deployment, a lot of my customers aren't going out building the entire Exchange 2010 environment and cutting everybody over at once. They're doing a much easier phased implementation, and with the flexibility that we have in server roles, they have that capability. Exchange 2010 is a modular system, just like Exchange 2007 was. We have the 5 server roles: edge transport, hub transport, mailbox server, client access server, and unified messaging. It reduces the time required for installation. It minimizes the manual post-install configuration by the administrator. It really limits the surface area available for attack to increase in security. If the only thing that's exposed to the internet is the client access server, then they no longer, the mailbox servers are not available for any sort of attack. You also gain the flexibility to deploy only the features and services necessary on a given server and manage accordingly. All server roles, with the exception of the edge transport server, can be deployed on a single server. So you can deploy mailbox server, client access, CAS, hub transport, and unified messaging all on a single server. More importantly, it's easy to take a role off of a server or add a role to a server as needed. If you're growing and you start off with a single server and you need to go ahead and separate out the client access and the hub transport, it's no longer a major migration issue. You simply stand up the new server with the client access and hub transport roles and remove them from your existing server. Anywhere access. With Anywhere Access, we help users get more done with the freedom to securely access their communications from virtually any platform, browser, or device. One of the big things that we hear is inbox overload. One of the things that we get with Outlook 2010 and with Exchange 2010 is an enhanced conversation view. So if I click on an email, I can see all the emails that are related to that. Mail tips help avoid undelivered and misdirected email. I'll show you that one. There is extensive features enhancing the voicemail. And then collaboration, we've got full featured experience across all three screens. I'll go into that depth a little bit later. And then I'll talk about federation of free busy details with partners. If you've ever had a company you work closely with and you need to share free busy data, this one you'll love. So, manage inbox overload. You can actually track all of your information in a single slide. The filters to help you find what you're looking for in a mailbox, and in search results that we've seen before. Conversation view is a whole new paradigm for how you read your email that will greatly enhance your productivity. Looking for one on here, and it blocks it, unfortunately. You have the availability. Excuse me. You have the availability to see additional emails for a single conversation. Instead of having to go find all of those emails or have links to them, it'll actually pull them up, list them all together. Mail tips is another one I wanted to point out. As you can see in this example, when you enter somebody's name into the to field, you'll see that if they have an automatic reply or something like that set up, it'll show that to you ahead of time. Nothing's worse than typing in somebody's email address and send them a message, and then you get back a response. And then you get back 20 responses as everybody else on the email replies. Enhancing voicemail messages. Microsoft does a pretty good speech-to-text preview. So if you're utilizing Unified Communications and you receive a voicemail, you'll get a sample of that information dropped into an email in your inbox. You can play the full voicemail. You also can see just a quick text so that you can triage it and slip through your emails a little bit quicker. And I'm going to skip. Talking about collaborating more effectively. You know, on the desktop side, we still have our Outlook 2010 or Outlook 2007. We've got the Macs, we've got Entourage. On the website, they now use what's called Outlook Web App as opposed to Outlook Web Access. That's still our Outlook interface email. And of course, on the mobile computers or our mobile devices, on a Windows mobile device, we've got Office Outlook Mobile. On other devices, we'll be using Exchange ActiveSync. And again, there's support for Droid, from Palm, from Apple, to get into your Exchange from almost any system out there. Collaborate more effectively if you've got another company that you work with closely and you need to share pre-busy information. In the past, this was not something that you wanted to try and do. There is a very simple method for federating calendar details with external business partners. Instead of just getting the crosshashes there when nothing shows up, we can actually connect to their system and receive their information and be able to look and see what their pre-busy data does. This is using a free service from Microsoft. It is certificate-based. It requires subscription from both sides. It's very straightforward to set up, and it's extremely secure. Like I said, it is certificate-based, and you have to exchange certificates to make it function. Protection and compliance. Microsoft has included a very basic email archiving system. What this basically does is sets up another mailbox and for the archiving for each individual user. It is completely integrated. It contains all of your retention and your discovery rules automatically applied to your archiving mailbox, just like they would do the regular. We can protect communications. We have an array of information protection and control tools. We can automate right management policies inside the transport level. And then, of course, with the advanced security, we've already seen the multiple antivirus scanning engines with Forefront and Exchange 2007. These have been enhanced for Exchange 2010. We have a choice of service or on-site protection like we've had in the past. we can go up to Microsoft or any of a number of third-party services, have our email scanned prior to coming into our systems. Email archiving, I'm not going to go into this in too great of depth, but just suffice to say that you can have rules set to enforce archiving. You can allow your users to enforce archiving. You can control moves into archiving, moves out of archiving, and delete through policies. They're automated. You can have time-based criteria. You can set the policies at an item level or a folder level. Most of my email I don't really need to archive, but you know what? That email that included the $2 million contract, I want that archived. I can set the policies at that level. And I'm going to hit 2 more slides here, and then we're going to come up short a little bit. But we're going to set, that's what I just said, you can set the granular per item retention policies and capture all edits and deletions with a legal hold. This is critical to our compliance groups. As more and more of us fall under various communications compliance rules from the government, we'll be using this more and more. And protect communications. We need to apply the right level of control-based rules based on the sensitivity of the data. We need to maximize control, but we can't put so much on there that we're making the user unable to work. So we can automatically protect emails after being sent with rights management policies inside the transport, and we would put our minimum level of protection on there, but we can be very, very specific. We can say who it's going to, we can say with certain contents, or we can actually look for a mask, say a social security number, and protect the information with that. We can prevent malicious software and spam from entering into our messaging environment throughout the environment, and this should be done at multiple levels. Microsoft has embraced this quite strongly. Whether we use a hosted service or we use a device, a black box device, like an iron port or something, before email even gets to our environment, before it goes through our firewall, we'll scan it there. We can have on-premises software scanning at the different levels. The hub transport level with the forefront protection for Exchange 2010, antivirus and anti-spam protection for the Exchange 2010 server roles, all the way down to the clients who should have similar protection based on them. This is the concept that was developed, started getting developed back in Exchange 2000. It's just been expanded and simplified quite a bit. One thing I just want to touch on, and I am just going to touch on it, several of you probably heard of BPOS, Microsoft's online service, the cloud service for Exchange. You can actually have within your environment users who utilize both your on-premises Exchange server and users who are hosted hosted in the cloud service, whether it be Microsoft directly or one of their licensed vendors. What this means is, in your GAL and in your Exchange management tool, you manage all of these people just like each other, except some are on your machines and some are hosted. This makes it a lot easier to say, you know what, I'm going to host my corporate environment because I got 10,000 people who are on highly connected bandwidth, but you know what, I got these 250 guys over in Europe, and they don't come into the office, they work out of their homes, so I'm going to use a hosted solution for those folks. They'll show up in the same GAL. They are managed just like they were managed on my on-premises Exchange server, and nobody sees a difference except for your administrators as far as whether or not they have the same email addresses or anything else. We find that this gives us a little bit of flexibility to handle, 95% of our users are easy. They're on our corporate environment. To handle those other 5%, And it might be the other way around depending on the environment. I have a customer who has 80% of their users are in the field and don't go to an office on a weekly basis. Very powerful there. Exchange Serve 2010, back to what we talked about earlier, right? We're lowering our IT costs with a flexible, reliable messaging platform. We're going to increase productivity through anywhere access to business communications. We're going to better manage risk by safeguarding our business with protection and compliance systems. So our next steps to upgrading to Exchange 2010. Catapult Systems, we're your go-to partner for implementing or upgrading to 2010. We have a very individualized approach for all of our customers for finding out requirements, developing an architecture that fits you, finding the features and functionalities that fit you, and then implementing it in your organization. We start by doing an evaluation. It's an in-depth review of current messaging environment and its dependencies. Then we move to the next phase, which of course is the installation. Includes more requirements gathering, infrastructure design and planning, exchange installation configuration, and issue remediation. By requirements gathering here, we're starting to talk about, message traffic, IOPS, disk I/O, things like that. The data migration includes moving from your current messaging systems and services and transferring them to the new Exchange environment, and then decommissioning your old systems. There is an Exchange, we do offer a free Exchange evaluation until May 1st of 2010. That is a one-day on-site evaluation of your environment where we'll talk about your system's requirements, what features and functionalities that you are looking for, what features and functionalities you have in place, what your environment looks like at the time, and come up with a high-level idea of where you want to go with Exchange 2010. For those of you who are on the call today, that is available to you until May 1st of 2010, and just call your local Catapult office, and we'll be happy to set you up with that. So if I can remember how to unmute.
The leader has unmuted your line.
Now that the line is unmuted, do we have any questions today? And please use the Q&A manager in Microsoft Office Live Meeting. Otherwise, we kind of get flooded in questions. So, okay, the first question I have here is the JBOD technology similar to that used in Windows Home Server? In other words, folders and files are replicated across the drives in a pool. To answer that question, the JBOD technology is exactly what it says. It is just a bunch of disks. It's vaguely similar to what's used in Windows Home Server. This is more along the lines of extending the volume across several drives. It does not in any way attempt to keep all of a particular file on a single drive. It does not attempt to strike the data across the drive, and it provides absolutely no redundancy. If you lose one drive, you will lose the database. So the only time you would use JBOD is if you were implementing the high availability, the database availability groups, and you could afford to lose the database because it'll replicate back quickly from one of the at least two other copies of the database. Did that answer the question? Okay. Another question I had was about database availability groups. The simplified answer on database availability groups is it's multiple copies of your databases spread out over multiple servers. If I assign a database availability group to 3 servers, all 3 servers have a copy of all of the databases in the database availability group, the DAG. However, only one of them is active at a time. So So you can have multiple multiple copies, but only one of them will be taking writes at any one time. The failover, they don't round robin or anything, only one active at one time, and the failover is automatic if one should go down. Okay, we have any other questions? Does the database replication and switchover on failure occur so that users do not lose anything or see any hiccups in the system? Yes. Within any of the access tools to get to Exchange, be that the desktop version of Outlook or the web interface or through any of the mobile devices, there is a timeout and a reconnect that happens automatically for the users. The database failover is measured in seconds, and that is well within that timeout. So if a user is trying to connect, has Outlook open, they won't notice whether they're in cached mode or not. If they're trying to actually, hit send receive and tell us to send an email, it might seem to take a second or more longer, but again, it won't require any intervention from them. They won't see a failure. Okay, if we don't have any other questions, thank you for attending our session today, and we look forward to speaking with you in the future. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact your local Catapult office. Everyone, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.